I now call the meeting to order. Sergeant at Arms, please invite Dr. Christopher Cheok to the witness table. Hi, morning, Chris. Please take your seat. You may remove your mask. For the record, please state your name, your occupation, and the positions you hold.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the Committee of Privileges. My name is Dr. Christopher Cheok Cheng Soon. I'm a psychiatrist by training. The positions I hold are that I'm the acting chief of the Department of Forensic Psychiatry, and I'm a senior consultant at the Institute of Mental Health.
Thank you. The evidence you'll be giving today before the committee will be taken on oath. If you so desire, you can also take an affirmation. Clerk, please administer the oath.
You may hold the Bible on your left hand together with the oath form, and you raise your right hand.
I, Christopher Cheok Cheng Soon, swear that the evidence that I shall give before this committee shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you. Please be seated. The Committee of Privileges is looking into the complaint made by the Leader of the House, Ms. Indrani Raja, against former member for Sengkang GRC, Ms. Raeesah Khan, for breach of privilege. Thank you very much for attending to today's hearing and for your expert evidence before the committee and to answer the questions which members of the committee would like to put to you. You have taken a solemn obligation to answer our questions truthfully. If you refuse to answer our questions directly or attempt to mislead the committee, such behavior will be an offense and in contempt of this committee. I also want to place it on record that this issue of a review from the psychiatrist was raised by Mr. Pritam Singh as Ms. Sylvia Lim, and they also had requested for such an examination to be made on Ms. Khan. But we appreciate your spending time to evaluate the situation. I'll now perhaps hand over to Minister Desmond Lee for some questions. Or perhaps before the questions, would you like to perhaps take us through some of your evaluations, and then perhaps you take questions from that point on?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have assessed Ms. Khan on two occasions, on Friday, 17 December, and Monday, 20th December. I received a formal letter of request from the Parliament on the morning of Friday, 17th of December, and I have also received a bundle of documents from the Parliament together with this request. I have also interviewed her husband as required by our standard procedures, and this is to obtain corroborative history from the next of kin. I have also watched the recordings of the parliamentary sessions where Ms. Khan spoke on August the 3rd, October the 4th, as well as the 1st of November 2021. And I also watched the recordings of the Committee of Privileges when Ms. Khan was testifying on 2nd and 3rd of December 2021. And I also read the reports from this committee that's published on the parliamentary website.
Yeah. Would you like to take us through your assessment?
My assessment, based on the brief that has been provided to me, was that during the times that Ms. Khan spoke in Parliament on 3rd August, October the 4th, as well as 1st of November 2021, as well as when she spoke at this Committee of Privileges on the 2nd and 3rd of December 2021, she did not suffer from any significant or material dissociation during these times. I also like to say that during this period from August to November 2021, she did not suffer from any significant psychiatric disorder that would have impaired her ability to testify or speak at such sessions as required for me to assess.
I see, understand. Any other further observations you'd like to share with us?
I'll be happy to answer any questions because there are many observations, but if I may, I also like to state that as far as possible in your questioning, I will try my utmost best to protect the privacy of Ms. Khan, and unless really required by this committee, I will endeavor to protect her privacy.
Yes, we appreciate it. Thank you. Mr. Desmond Lee.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cheok, for your assessment that you've just provided. I thought it's important to set out the context. I think the Parliament Secretariat would have given you some background, and hence you went through all the material that was available in the public domain. But as Mr. Chairman had said at the start of this hearing, this Committee of Privileges has been set up to inquire into the conduct of former Sengkang MP, Ms. Raeesah Khan, when she said some things in Parliament on the 3rd of August and the 4th of October, which are allegedly untruthful. She's admitted to those untruths. And then the second thing we've been asked to do, of course, is to then assess her level of culpability. And in that regard, the factual circumstances, as well as any potential medical circumstances surrounding what she said in Parliament, would be relevant for our determination to then weigh how serious her actions were. And in that regard, through the course of the COP, we've heard conflicting evidence. Following the media reports, you will probably be familiar with what the conflicting evidence pertains to. And they in just pertain to different accounts of what happened provided by Ms. Khan and some witnesses, as opposed to Mr. Pritam Singh and some other witnesses. These turned upon whether, if and whether she was told to tell the truth in Parliament, or told to, in quoting her WhatsApp message, to take the lie to the grave. So whether she was told by her superiors to confess and tell the truth in Parliament and make a clean confession of it, or to maintain the narrative which is false and continue the lie. And in the context of that, there was a request by one of the witnesses, which is Mr. Pritam Singh, leader of the opposition, to ask the committee to assess her mental health or mental wellness. And in that context, some terms were brought to our attention, such as dissociation or disassociation and post-traumatic stress disorder, because these pertain to what she said about a sexual assault victim. So that is just a broad background to give you a sense of what this hearing is about. I thought you could help us by giving us a sense of the brief that you were asked to carry out in terms of examination. You have just told us your assessment, and then maybe give us a sense of the basis for your assessment, so that, as laypersons on this panel, we have a better understanding.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I received this formal request from Parliament on the morning of Friday, 17 December. And in this letter, they have actually given me the background as to why they have requested this assessment. And they have also provided some information. I do not know whether you have a copy of this brief that was given to me. If not, I'll give it to the clerk after this. What they have said here was that Ms. Khan had disclosed that that a report dated 3rd November was provided by her psychotherapist, Ms. Joanna Tan, and she works at Adelphi Psych Medical Clinic, and that Ms. Khan had also disclosed some information during the Workers' Party disciplinary panel on 4th of November. They wanted us, they also stated here that Dr. John Bosco Lee had referred Ms. Khan to Ms. Joanna Tan for therapeutic support. And these sessions commence on the 12th of October. They provided a memo from Ms. Joanna Tan that stated that Ms. Khan suffered from symptoms, and I stress again the word symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. And from my interpretation of what's on the memo, Ms. Joanna Tan did not state that Ms. Khan had post-traumatic stress disorder, only symptoms of. And in the email between I presume the Parliament and Ms. Khan, who had requested a memo from Dr. John Bosco Lee, Ms. Khan had replied that when she approached Dr. Lee for a memo, he had mentioned that as Ms. Joanna Tan was the primary therapist, it was more appropriate for Ms. Joanna Tan to provide this report. So in this whole assessment, I have not had any sight of any reports by Dr. John Bosco Lee. And in Singapore context, any psychiatric diagnosis is typically made by a psychiatrist. So in the brief that was given to me, it was required for me to assess whether Ms. Khan was currently suffering from any significant or material dissociation, whether she was of sound mind and rational mind to provide evidence to the committee, and whether she was able to recount rationally and understand the events that transpired in Parliament on 3rd August, 4th October, as well as before the Committee of Privileges on 2nd and 3rd December, and whether Ms. Khan had at any stage between August and November 2021 suffered from any significant or material dissociation that would have had an impact on her actions during this period. That was what was asked of me.
And so maybe just to tally that with what you've just told us at the start of this hearing, you were asked whether she was suffering from any significant or material dissociation. Perhaps you share with us what dissociation is for the benefit of all of us as laymen.
Okay.
And then if you could then repeat your assessment and tell us the basis for that. Thank you.
So dissociation is the loss of the integrative function of the human mind. So in a normal setting, the human mind is able to integrate many sensations, thoughts, processes, ideas, memory, muscle movement, so that the person can function in a coordinated way. However, when a person dissociates, the person may lose one or more of these functions. And in the state of dissociation, this phenomenon is not caused by a medically diagnosed problem. That is to say, if someone dissociates and loses half the power in his body, it is not due to a stroke that has caused this impairment. It's actually a psychological reaction that impairs the person's brain function in a particular area of functioning. There are many types of dissociation. Some forms of dissociation can be a person may feel that he doesn't have a sense of himself. He feels like he's outside his body. Sometimes they may feel that when they are looking at something, it looks as if they are in a movie, like watching something like in a movie, two-dimensional and not like three-dimensional. Other forms of dissociation include a temporary loss of memory or a temporary loss of particular power in their body. And typically, after minutes or hours, these functions return to that person. Yeah. Dissociation can be caused by many reasons. In normal people without any illness, any pathology, dissociation can happen when a person is in deep prayer, when they are meditating, or when they are in a state of hypnosis. when a person consumes illegal drugs or when they are taking legal anesthetic agents, they also can go into a state of dissociation. When there's a psychiatric illness such as post-traumatic stress disorder or what we call dissociative disorders, the phenomenon of dissociation can also occur. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is that dissociation is just a symptom. It is not a medical diagnosis. It can occur in normal people. It can be induced by drugs, or it can occur in the context of a psychiatric disorder.
Thank you. So what you're telling us is that dissociation is not a medical diagnosis. It's a symptom that can result from a range of causes, both
Yes.
clinical as well as external due to drug use and other forms of action.
Yes.
So we're trying to focus on what happened on, maybe say you start with 3rd of August, when she told the first untruth in Parliament about having accompanied a sexual assault survivor. Based on your assessment of Ms. Khan and looking at all the relevant material that you've looked at, what is your assessment again, and what's the basis for that assessment?
Okay. I had viewed the recordings of her speech in Parliament that day, and I've also asked her about it. During my interview with her, she said that she was present, fully present mentally when she was giving that speech in Parliament. And when I viewed the videos, there was no sign that she dissociated while she delivered that speech in Parliament.
Okay. Then you mentioned that you looked also at the 4th of October, which is the second time she came to Parliament. She was asked some questions by the Home Affairs Minister about her 3rd of August anecdote about the sexual assault survivor. And she responded to his questions and, in essence, repeated the untruth. What is your assessment of Ms. Khan's state of mind or physiology at that point in time?
Okay. I opine that she actually was really of sound mind. She did not dissociate. Okay. And whatever she said, she was fit, mentally fit to say what she has said, and it was out of her own will, and she knew what she was doing.
Thank you. Then we come to the 1st of November, which is her 3rd parliamentary speech in respect of this matter, which is the false anecdote about the sexual assault survivor. In that, on that occasion, she made a personal statement explaining or saying that she had told untruths on the 3rd of August and the 4th of October, and she then explained from her perspective why she had told those untruths. Again, could you share your assessment of her mental health state at that point in time?
When she delivered that speech on the 1st of November in Parliament, she did not dissociate during the time that she was giving that speech. I think that during that period of time, from October to from after the 4th of October to the time she gave that speech, I believe there was some anxiety and some concerns that certain actions that she take would lead to certain consequences, and she had sought treatment with Dr. John Bosco Lee and also with Ms. Joanna Tan. But on the day specifically on 1st of November, while delivering the speech, she was of sound mind. She did not dissociate, and it was very clear from the video recordings that she was present mentally during the time of the speech.
So based on your assessment, from the period of August, the 3rd, all the way till 1st of November, that is your period of assessment, is it? Or more than that?
Yes, there was a period of, all the way to actually the 3rd of December. Actually.
When she appeared before the Committee of Privileges. Let's go to the 2 days in which she was giving evidence before us here, and we want to have a sense of whether her evidence before the COP is has in any way been impacted by dissociation or any other possible mental disorder or clinical condition. When she appeared on the 2nd and 3rd of December, in your assessment, was she suffering from any impairment from mental health conditions?
No, she wasn't. She wasn't. Maybe at this point, I'd just like to emphasize the standard to which we use. So the competency to testify to a committee of privileges or in court, typically from our standard, we say that the person must be able to understand the question, able to recollect the information, and able to communicate to the committee or to the court. And in the Singapore Mental Capacity Act, it is said that a person has mental capacity when he is able to understand the information relevant to the decision, to retain that information, to use or weigh that information in the decision-making process, and to communicate that decision. This is our Singapore Mental Capacity Act. By using this standard, I opine that she was fit to testify before this committee on the 2nd and 3rd of December. Yes.
Thank you. Would any form, so in your view, from August all the way till December, which is the period of your assessment, your view is that she's not suffering from any significant or material mental health condition. Am I right? That's what I hear from you.
Yes, I agree that she did, from the period of August all the way to December the 3rd, she did not suffer from a psychiatric disorder so significant that it would have impaired her ability to give evidence or to make her speeches.
When asked by this panel as to, because one of the witnesses, Mr. Singh, said that Ms. Khan was lying before the COP, and when asked why he thought she could have been lying based on his assertion, he raised the possibility of dissociation or other mental health conditions that may cause her to lie or predispose her to lie. As a clinician, having examined the subject, Ms. Khan, and looked at the material, is it possible? Would she be suffering from any mental disorder that predisposes her to telling untruths?
She did not suffer from any psychiatric disorder that would predispose her to saying untruths. In fact, I have been in practice for more than 25 years, and I found that actually many people with psychiatric disorders do not tell untruths more than any normal human being. The only time that perhaps that they have to say untruths is that during finding a job or in social settings, they may have to hide their mental illness because of social stigma. But other than that, they do not say untruths more frequently than any other human being.
Okay. So when she was giving evidence before the COP on the 2nd and 3rd December, what you're saying is that her testimony was, she was of sound mind, she was able to decide for herself what she wanted to say or did not want to say, and not laboring under any mental disorder that would render her testimony untruthful or not of her own free will.
I agree with what you said.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with this panel to inform us?
I'm happy to take questions.
Hi, morning, Dr. Cheok.
Good morning.
So I understand that suspects who commit serious crimes will be put under surveillance while they are undergoing investigation, so that they can't feign their mental illness and use it as a mitigating factor. So I would like to seek your guidance as to how do you ensure that your interview with Ms. Khan is robust enough and able to conclude that she's not suffering from dissociation, in case she calibrated the replies in front of you so as to suit a particular agenda. Yeah.
So in our assessment, we follow best practice in our profession. And so the best practice is to interview the person on multiple occasions. And in this case, I have seen her 2 times on the 17th and 20th of December. And we also independently interview the next of kin, and usually we get someone who knows her well or has lived with her, so that we can ask the person about her behavior outside the clinical setting. In this particular case, it was fortunate that we had video recordings of how she behaved in Parliament, the things that she said, and also the COP interviews were also available for me to view. And because all these recordings are contemporaneous, they are live, it can easily corroborate my opinion that she did not dissociate at the times that I was required to assess her.
Thank you.
Good morning.
In your interview with Ms. Khan, did you ask her directly for her medical history of any symptoms of dissociation or post-traumatic stress syndrome?
Yes, I did.
What was her answer?
Can I give my summary opinion?
Actually, I'm asking what was her answer to, when you asked her directly, did you, for example, her medical history or what she suffered, whether when she suffered from dissociation or PTSD, what was her direct answer to you?
She had some symptoms of psychological trauma. She had there were many times when she felt that she had been traumatized psychologically. And the first time was after the sexual assault. And there were times after the election, as well as, of course, after election, and because there was certain police investigations at that time, she felt psychologically traumatized. But being psychologically traumatized doesn't equate to having post-traumatic stress disorder. So she does have symptoms, but it didn't reach the severity that a psychiatrist would diagnose PTSD.
Did you find out from her, I think you have read from the notes from the proceedings, the transcripts and all that which were provided. I think you confirmed that you read through the evidence that had been given, and you are aware that she had a sexual assault experience. I think it's in 2008. Did you ask her what were the did she share with you what were the traumatic effects that that episode had on her over the past 10 years?
Yes, she did.
Could you share with the committee how would these what were these experiences? What were these traumatic experiences?
With due respect, Mr. Tan, I think I would like to protect the privacy of Ms. Khan. I would be happy to share with you my opinion about my findings, but I respectfully ask that I don't have to disclose what she has told me.
If you can just provide your assessment and opinion, that would do. Okay. Thank you.
My overall opinion is that while she did have transient symptoms of some symptoms of PTSD, it was not enduring, it was not persistent, and over the course of 10 years, as you have asked, she did not have symptoms that persisted, and it did not impair her ability to function as a wife, as a mother, and as as a member of parliament.
So are you saying that she would have recovered from the trauma of being sexually assaulted?
It depends on what degree you're asking for. I think when any normal human being has undergone a trauma, the memories would never be erased. Certainly, some of these memories can trigger some feelings of anxiety or disappointment or sadness when we recall it, but it doesn't reach that degree or that severity that impairs the person. So when you ask about recovery, what I'd like to specifically say that she was psychologically traumatized by the incident. However, she did not reach the threshold that one would diagnose post-traumatic stress disorder. And as a survivor, she continues to be able to function in her daily life in multiple dimensions. When we assess, we would assess her ability to function at home as a parent, as a wife, and also in her occupation.
In your assessment, do you think this trauma that she went through as a result of the sexual assault would still have some effect on her whenever the incident is being raised, when she think about the incident, such that it would affect her decision making on the incident? For example, when she decided to lie to the Parliament on 3rd of August that she accompanied a sexual assault survivor to the police station when she did not in fact do so.
I think that when a person undergoes a traumatic experience, it would be naive to think that it has left absolutely no mark on the person. However, on the speech on 3rd August, I've been made to believe that this was a prepared speech. It wasn't something. The anecdote that she has mentioned was not said on impulsively in Parliament. The speech had been prepared already, and she had known that that was an untruth. So, in my opinion, she did not dissociate, or there was no psychiatric disorder that would have influenced, her ability and her soundness of mind to write that speech and to deliver that speech.
Are you able to then offer any reason as to why she would suddenly make up a lie like this?
I don't think it's within my remit to make such an opinion, and I do not think that this is the role of a psychiatrist.
Thank you.
Zaki?
I'm not finished.
Oh, no, sorry.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay. Dennis, sorry.
I'm not finished yet, Chairman. Did you even ask her why she decided to share in Parliament on 3rd August about her anecdote of accompanying a sexual assault victim to the police station?
Yes, I did.
What was her answer?
She said she was trying to advance the cause of what she believed passionately about, which was women's issues.
So you think her own experience had no part to play in the lie?
What I can say is that she did not dissociate. She was of sound mind. She wrote the speech. She delivered the speech as she had written. As to her motivations and as to why she decided to lie, I don't think it's within my remit.
And you may recall from the evidence that she actually put in the relevant paragraphs on this lie at a very late stage in her speech. She has already prepared a speech, and she put it in at a very late stage. Do you think that there's any reason why she would do so, and has this to do with the fact of her experience?
Please correct me if I'm wrong. I have tried to, as much as possible, to watch all the proceedings and all that. I'd like to qualify first that the statements that I make in the next few minutes may not necessarily come from a psychiatric opinion. It's what I have seen. Okay? What I'm made to believe through the videos was that she had prepared the speech, and Mr. Singh had asked her to substantiate it, and perhaps she had written that anecdote in to try to substantiate her speech.
Yeah, yes, you're right. She was asked by Mr. Singh to substantiate, to be prepared to substantiate. Yeah, but my question relates to just before. That means the fact that she had only squeezed in the anecdote very late in time, right? Do you think that has got anything to do with the trauma that she went through as a victim herself?
I think she feels passionately about this cause because of her experience. The passion probably is communicated in the speech and the topic she chose to speak on. Yeah, I do not think that her experience of trauma would have directly caused her to want to write that particular anecdote as it was written.
Bear with me, yeah? Let me organize my questions. I have a few more questions to go. What tests are typically performed to diagnose dissociation or dissociative identity disorder?
Okay, Mr. Tan, so I'd like to clarify that you are asking two separate questions. One is to what test...
Part A and B, yes.
Yes. What test is for dissociation, and the other one is dissociative identity disorder. Okay. Now, for dissociation, typically there are no tests such as brain imaging that is required. It is about the observations of the witnesses, as well as the description by witnesses, as well as the patient themselves. This is sufficient if it fits the description of dissociation for us to diagnose the symptom of dissociation. Dissociative identity disorder is an extremely rare disorder. Okay, the common name for dissociative identity disorder is multiple personality. Okay, and in my career, I can't recall seeing any patient that fits dissociative identity disorder. It is that rare. They may exist in Singapore, but certainly I've not come across one in my own practice. Dissociative identity disorder, or the layman term multiple personalities, comes from, typically is seen in a person that has gone through repeated childhood trauma. And the person will switch from one identity to another identity, and even speaking in different voices, depending on the identity that the person assumes. So this is a very rare condition, and certainly Ms. Khan does not fit this description.
Would you say that can dissociation be triggered by any traumatic event?
If you ask me this in general, yes. A traumatic event can precipitate dissociation. Many times during a sexual assault, I say this in general, many times during a sexual assault, the the survivor may dissociate because the stress is so great that this is a coping mechanism for the survivor to go through that experience. So yes, traumatic experiences can precipitate dissociation.
So for someone with a trauma-induced dissociation or dissociative disorder, is it possible for a person to exhibit symptoms whenever the subject of your trauma is brought up?
Certainly, in general, yes.
So what would these symptoms be?
It depends on the person to person. As I mentioned earlier to this committee, there are many forms of dissociation. Some people lose their memory. Some people lose their muscle power. Some people feel as if they are viewing their world like a movie. Others have out of body. They feel that they are not within their body, but they're slightly outside their body. So it really depends on the individual.
So would something like false memory creation be a symptom?
False memory creation can possibly be one form of dissociation, yes.
False identity creation?
Alternate identity.
Alternate identity.
It is possible.
Memory lapses?
Certainly.
These are general.
In general.
In
yes.
general, right? So I think it's important to note that.
But otherwise, this person can still be high functioning in general, even when the traumatic event is not mentioned.
Certainly, and even when the traumatic event is mentioned, not everyone dissociates. Yes. I mean, in the literature, following a traumatic event, roughly about 1/3 of people go on to have PTSD. It's not that everyone will go on to have post-traumatic stress disorder. We as human beings have our own protective mechanisms through the support of family, friends, and the people around us. Many people can recover from their psychiatric disorders. So it's not to say that trauma equates to having dissociation, equates to having PTSD. Yeah.
So let me put it another way. Can a person with trauma-induced dissociation or even PTSD be high functioning in general, but fall prone to memory lapses or false memory creation when the subject of the trauma kicks in? Is that possible?
Okay. First, I would like to refer you, and I can provide this to the committee after this inquiry, after my testimony. And this is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, 5th version of psychiatric illness. Okay. Basically, this manual is the criteria that we use to diagnose mental illness. Okay. And it's published by the American Psychiatric Association. One of the diagnostic criteria that we are very concerned about is what we call criterion G. Okay.
So criterion
G.
G.
G. Okay, and it states here, the disturbance causes clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, and other areas of functioning. Okay. So, if a person is high functioning, okay, then they would not have satisfied criterion G, okay, such that they would not be diagnosed with PTSD disorder. I acknowledge that persons undergoing trauma can persist to have some symptoms of psychological trauma, but they wouldn't reach the threshold that it will become a psychiatric disorder.
So you are saying, in other words, that in your view, okay, let me put it another way. So do you agree or disagree that when I say, when I ask, can a person with trauma-induced dissociation or PTSD be high functioning in general, but may still fall prone to memory lapses or false memory creation when the subject of their trauma is brought up or kicks in?
I say in general there is a possibility, but we must always contextualize to the person that we are speaking about.
I don't know whether you recall in the evidence, I can refer to you if you need to. There was a message that Ms. Khan sent to her two assistants after the outcome of her first meeting on the 8th August with Mr. Singh, Ms. Lim, and Mr. Faisal, where she relates, let me go to that document, please bear with me.
Perhaps while Mr. Dennis Tan is looking for the particular points that were raised, perhaps I could build on...
Chairman, I can proceed.
Yeah, I'll just build on this. Okay. It's related to some of the points made earlier. Mr. Dennis Tan was asking questions in general about some possible responses. But clearly from what you shared, there's really a range of responses from individuals who may suffer from these conditions or symptoms of these conditions. And would it be fair to say that one would actually really need to look at a specific subject and specific context to be able to provide a more accurate description of how an individual might or might not respond?
Yes, we really need to contextualize to that individual and how the person responded, because really there is a range of responses following trauma. There's a range of dissociative experience, and we cannot generalize this whole topic and just speak in general. We really need to really come down to the details for a particular patient.
Understand. Thank you. Dennis?
Thank you, Chairman. Okay. Let me rephrase my question. Just now I asked you, and I think you agree generally, that a person with trauma-induced dissociation can be high-functioning but fall prone to memory lapses or false memory creation. So let me go into a bit of detail about this false memory creation. Would it be possible that when the trauma kicks in, a person can be prone to making, in the course of a conversation, be prone to having a false memory creation? That means basically somehow certain part of her speech contains certain falsehood, and this is caused by that trauma. So not the entire part of the speech is entirely untruth, but in a conversation, she may relate a particular untruth amidst other facts which are not in dispute.
It is one of the many possibilities for why a person would make such a statement. There are many other reasons why the statement could have been made in that way.
Okay. So can I refer you to the document tab in tab L, page 2. This is the documents are under Ms. Loh Pei Ying's, but it's actually a WhatsApp message from Ms. Khan to Ms. Loh and Mr. Naden, as at page 2, towards the bottom, and it's dated 8 August. Are we on the same page? And it says, "Hey guys, I just met with Pritam, Sylvia, and Faisal, and we spoke about the Muslim issues and the police accusation. I told them what I told you guys, and they have agreed that the best thing to do is to take the information to the grave. They also suggested I write a statement to send out this evening." All right. I think the issue at hand is that it is not in dispute that Ms. Khan met with Pritam, Sylvia, and Faisal. That's the first sentence. Second sentence, they discussed about the Muslim issues and the police accusation, that this is not in dispute. And then she go on to say, I told them what I told you guys, and they have agreed that the best thing to do is to take the information to the grave. So this statement, as you may be aware, is in dispute. Mr. Pritam, Ms. Lim, and Ms. Faisal do not agree that they had agreed with her that the information that she should take the information to the grave. And then she finished the message by saying they also suggested I write a statement to send out this evening. And you may recall this is a statement about where she put on her Facebook about the Muslims related issues of her speech, which is not related to the sexual assault anecdote, accompanying the victim of a sexual assault to the police station anecdote. Would you agree that this could be an example whereby a person suffering from a certain trauma, right, while still generally high functioning, he could send out a message, but would selectively put in a lie in her statement, in her message?
So now we are speaking specifics, not in general. In this specific instance, in the context of Ms. Khan and what I've assessed, I disagree with your statement.
But you agree that in general, a person who suffers trauma would be able to speak, would be high functioning. So when he's putting out a statement, talking to someone, giving a message, that conversation or that particular message can contain some falsity amidst other truths within the statement. Generally, it is possible.
In general, it's possible, but there are also many other explanations why the person may want to give a falsehood.
Thank you. Can I also move on to ask you about other aspects of when the trauma is mentioned? Is it the case that when a trauma is mentioned and a person suffering from PTSD or dissociation, it can create a certain distress to this person? Symptoms, right? This could be a symptom.
So in specific, Ms. Khan does not suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay, but in general, what you have said is that if you're talking about causing distress when talking about the trauma, I think it is quite understandable in our human experience that once we have undergone a traumatic experience, we cannot erase that memory. So because it's such traumatic memory, it's not strange that a person will be distressed if someone brought up this bad experience. If someone mentions a bad experience, people would certainly feel negative about that traumatic experience. That's only normal in human beings.
In the evidence that has been given so far, I believe Ms. Lim, Mr. Faisal, and Mr. Singh has mentioned that in the various meetings they had with her, she had always been emotional whenever the issue of the sexual assault comes up. So, for example, I can just relate some of these incidents to you. So she burst into tears or she get emotional every time the incident was mentioned, the sexual assault incident mentioned. On the 8th of August, the meeting, 8th August, all three of them mentioned it. I think the meeting on the 12th of October with Sylvia and Pritam. And during the two disciplinary panel interviews, and I believe in the CEC meeting on the 29th of October and the 30th November. How would you reconcile the fact that she is constantly emotional whenever this incident is mentioned during those occasions? How would you reconcile this with your earlier findings that she is not affected by any post-traumatic trauma or dissociation?
I'd like to clarify that my testimony is that she does not have post-traumatic stress disorder. I did not say that she did not have some symptoms of being psychologically traumatized. What I'm saying is that it did not reach the threshold of a psychiatric disorder. Based on the way you have framed your question, my opinion is that if she were to be emotional whenever the topic of her sexual assault was mentioned, this is a very understandable, very normal reaction from a survivor of a sexual assault. A sexual assault is one of the most traumatic experiences that someone has gone through. It is a violation of their person. I would be very surprised if anyone can speak about their sexual assault plainly, carelessly, without emotion. I think that's even more abnormal than being emotional when talking about their sexual assault.
So would you say that I note that you say that she is not suffering from PTSD, perhaps anymore, but that you agree that she still there are still symptoms of her. Symptoms rather than the condition. Is that your distinction?
Some symptoms.
Some symptoms. So she continued to suffer from some symptoms of this post-traumatic symptoms, whichever way you call it. So you agree with that?
If I may just give an analogy, if I can use an analogy, when a person goes for a major exam, a person may have anxiety, so they have the symptom of anxiety, It doesn't mean they have a generalized anxiety disorder or a panic disorder, which is a psychiatric illness. Yeah. And each time they go for a high-stakes exam, they may still continue to have anxiety. So in the psychiatric profession, we always put in this criteria that the symptoms, when present, must be able to reach that intensity and that persistence that impairs the person's functioning. So many people who have gone through traumatic experience, be it a sexual assault, a road traffic accident, a physical assault, domestic violence, they would continue to have some anxiety when they speak about a topic, or even they watch a news story about another person's trauma. These are all normal reactions, but it doesn't mean they are mentally incapacitated by their symptoms.
Thank you. So you're saying that some of these survivors of big traumatic events like sexual assault or serious accidents, they may always suffer symptoms whenever the memory of the trauma is evoked, and it can go on for many years. And they may not be exactly suffering from a PTSD disorder, so to speak. That is your evidence.
My evidence is that they may suffer the symptoms, but it may not impair them. I would say that it would be very unusual for a person to undergo a traumatic experience and just erase it and sit. If the person told me that they went through a traumatic experience and then went on to say, I forgot it all totally, I would say that is highly abnormal. It's just a defense mechanism trying to perhaps compartmentalize or suppress that memory. But if a person talks about their traumatic experience, they are able to talk about it rationally, in a measured way, displaying some emotion about it, but of course not too emotional. I think these are all very normal. I mean, it's normal human behavior to act in this way. So specifically, I think for Ms. Khan, even though some of these upsetting memories, she may feel upset by some of these things, it doesn't reach that threshold that would have impaired her judgment, impaired her decision-making capacity, or her reality testing even. She was of sound mind.
Would it still be possible that when the trauma is brought up, it would have affected her judgment in such a way that she is capable of false memory creation, telling a lie?
Is this a specific question?
It's a specific question to applying to Ms. Khan.
Okay. First of all, she doesn't suffer from dissociation. She may have said so, but I think she used the term in a layperson's capacity, not from a professional definition of what dissociation is. Okay. So my testimony is that she does not suffer from dissociation or traumatic dissociation for that matter. Okay. I do not think that even when she speaks or the topic of her sexual assault was mentioned, it affected her so severely that she lost her mental capacity.
Perhaps not losing mental capacity, but lapses of judgment? Telling a lie, for example? Could you exclude that definitively?
Okay, so in the Handbook of the Mental Capacity Act, it is said that people can make bad judgments. And making bad judgments doesn't mean it is due to mental illness. Any normal human being can make bad judgments.
But it could be due to the trauma. The bad judgment could be due to the trauma.
In specific, for this particular instance, I do not think so.
Did you ask her how did she arrive at her own admission that she suffers from dissociation?
If I recall correctly, she said that her psychotherapist told her that she had dissociation. I had asked her what did she mean by dissociation, okay, and her reply made me believe that she didn't fully understand what dissociation was. And when she used that term, she did not have a deep understanding of what that term meant.
Can I just ask you a few more questions about dissociation? How many categories of dissociation are there?
I think there are no real, internationally agreed way of categorizing the different types of dissociation. But certainly, broadly speaking, there could be psychological manifestations of dissociation, such, for example, a loss of memory, change of identity, a feeling that things are not real, a feeling that a person is not within their physical body. So these are the psychological manifestations of dissociation. There are physical manifestations as well. Technically, we call them a conversion. But this is technicalities. And this is when people lose maybe sometimes half their body sensation, half their body power. Yeah. So these are the physical manifestations.
Would you be able to share your understanding about dissociation being possibly conscious or unconscious?
I don't understand that question.
Okay. Are you aware that? No, let me rephrase this. Sorry about it. Is there a difference between conscious and unconscious dissociation? Are you aware of this?
Okay, I don't understand the context in which you are coming from, but okay, let me answer you what I understand from your question. Okay, some people can voluntarily try to put themselves into a dissociative state. This can be done through deep prayer, meditation, hypnosis, even through trance in religious ceremonies. When people undergo a trance state, as we see in some of our temples, Chinese temples sometimes, what they call tiao tang, okay, these trance states are all dissociative states as well. So if you talk about consciousness, yes, they consciously enter into that state. Yes, some people can also unconsciously go into a dissociative state when there's extreme stress and they need to protect their mind from the stress. So I don't really understand the context.
Thank you for the explanation. Let me put it in a certain context. Let me go back to how dissociation will manifest in the form of lying, telling an untruth. How would you apply the terms of unconscious and conscious dissociation to the fact that a person who suffers from it is lying?
Again, this is a general question?
Yes,
or is it
it's a general
specific to Ms.
question
Khan?
for now, yeah.
This is a very broad question because there's so many manifestations. Okay, say for example, a person has, say, dissociative identity disorder, and the person assumes another identity. So identity A, the person may call themselves Peter, and identity B, he may call themselves James. Yeah. So so who is lying? Because they've assumed a different identity. Peter may say that he has gone to this particular school X, and James may say he has gone to this particular school Y. So I mean, these are the illustrative examples that I can provide, but I don't.
So I think we are here, perhaps, I mean, we have been
Chairman,
going on the general questions. Let me finish. I think the point here is that we're trying to evaluate, and I think the doctor is here to evaluate Ms. Khan's condition. I understand where you're going with the general questions, but as I explained, I think there are many, many variables and many circumstances. If it leads to where you would like to go, I mean, that'd be useful, but I thought perhaps if we could be a bit more specific, that would be useful, I think, for us to assess her level of responsibility, I think, which is what the issue at hand today. Because I think when you go into the realms of general questioning, there's so many possibilities and really depends on context. So perhaps if you could narrow down, I think that'd be useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, for that. Yeah, I'm sorry if I didn't make myself clearer. Let me try to make it a bit more helpful to you to understand. When a person, you were raising a certain example of a person having an identity, right? So let's say whether he's assuming a false identity consciously or unconsciously. There's a difference, right? Is there a difference?
It really depends.
He knows that he's assuming a false. He's assuming a false identity or telling a lie, or he is not even aware that.
No,
is there a distinction as such?
In the case when a person dissociates, in the case of dissociative identity disorder, they truly believe they are that alternate personality.
Could it also be possible that when they are suffering from some symptom of dissociation, they knew about dissociation and they make use of this knowledge as an excuse?
Can I clarify is whether if a person knows that this phenomenon of dissociation exists, then he uses it to the person's advantage?
Yes.
That would be malingering, isn't it?
But that is possible, right? Is that possible for a dissociation sufferer or somebody who thinks that he's suffering from dissociation to make use of that fact to his or her advantage?
I mean, if you say in general, then of course it is possible, but that would be malingering.
But these cases do exist.
Of course.
People do take advantage of that.
Certainly.
Too. So but you do not agree that Ms. Khan suffers from an unconscious or conscious or unconscious form of dissociation at all?
I disagree, yes. She does not suffer from this significant dissociation during the periods from August to December the 3rd.
The fact that she has been telling people that she suffers from dissociation, including yourself, could it be possible that she's made use of this fact as an excuse for herself when she makes a lie?
I think that's beyond my remit. What I can say is that when I asked her what she understood by the meaning of the word dissociation, it did not fit the medical definition of what dissociation is.
Did you ask her about the EMDR therapy that she has undergone?
No, I did not.
Did you ask her about any treatment or therapy she has undergone recently?
I asked her why she had seen her therapist, yes.
Did you ask her about her treatments that she has undergone?
She told me she was taking some medications and undergoing psychotherapy.
Have you analyzed the treatments or prescription that she has been given?
She informed me that she didn't know the name of the tablets that she had been prescribed.
Have you sought to make contact with her, the medical practitioners that have been assisting her?
No, I have not.
So you have not seen their her medical records from the past?
I think under the Personal Data Protection Act, I have no access to her medical records. She has stated in the email to Parliament, the email to the Parliament representative, that she had attempted to get a memo from Dr. John Bosco Lee, and he had, from her interpretation, had said that it's better for Ms. Joanna Tan to provide that memo. So I have not had any sight of any medical report from her psychiatrist.
Did you ask her whether she undergone any previous psychiatric or psychological treatment prior to August 2021?
Yes, I did.
Are you able to share with the committee whether she has been undergoing treatment?
I respectfully declined to answer that question in respect her privacy.
I understand. In your professional opinion, does Ms. Khan harbor feelings of resentment towards Mr. Singh or Ms. Lim as a result of the events of, sorry, not Ms. Lim, Mr. Singh, as a result of the events of 3rd August to 1st November?
That's beyond my remit.
Okay. I'm only just asking whether, in your opinion, does she harbor any feelings of resentment from your interview, and could these feelings have had a bearing on her testimony in the Committee of Privilege hearings?
No, that's beyond my remit.
Thank you. In the evidence that has been given, there, I will just try to summarize as best as I can. Right? From the perspective of Mr. Singh, Ms. Lim, and Mr. Faisal, certainly, she first, let me just set up some facts, and then with the context, then I'm going to ask you the question. So the facts are a little bit long. But basically, just to remind you that, she first admitted to the lie to Mr. Singh on, I think, 7th of August, when Mr. Singh pressed her about it. There is a dispute in the version of the event. Basically, Mr. Singh's position to her is that she's got to deal with it. She's got to take ownership. Basically, Mr. Singh's position is she's got to be prepared to go to the Parliament to admit to the lie. Okay, Ms. Khan has a different view of this. But assuming Mr. Singh's position is correct, okay, so we go down to 4th of October, in the second sitting, she then added another lie. She continued the lie. And after that, she then, when she met Mr. Singh and Ms. Lim that evening, I don't know whether you remember this, she said to him that, but there's another path of honesty, okay? Yet on 12th of October, according to the evidence of Mr. Singh and Ms. Lim, when they were meeting at Mr. Singh's request to prepare or to prepare to make an admission in Parliament, she initially refused to admit. She tried to wriggle out of it, and but she was then told that she had to do it, and she agreed to deal with it. Do you agree that her conduct has been confusing? I.e., her conduct in not wanting to even coming up to admit her lie for these number of months from August to October. Do you find it confusing? Why would she want to delay this coming to terms with this issue and making a decision what to do about it? Do you find it confusing?
Because I don't really know what's the established facts, but I would find it difficult to comment on your question. All I can say is that she was not laboring under a significant dissociation and not laboring under a significant psychiatric disorder.
So can I just ask you, after you have assessed her, right? Yes, you have shared with the committee about your findings. I'm bearing in mind what you said about she is not suffering from PTSD or dissociation, but I think it is not in dispute that, from what you have shared, that she may still be suffering from symptoms, especially when the incident of the trauma of her sexual assault is raised each time. What would you advise to her as possible treatments or possible measures that she can adopt to minimize any risk, to minimize such incidents?
I can speak in general about some strategies to cope with some of these things, but I'm not her treating doctor, so it's not my place to answer in specific for her. Because I think this is best suited to be advised from her treating doctor. I'm just the assessor.
Okay. Chairman, I have no more questions.
Zaki?
Doctor, thank you so much for sharing some of your insights and assessments. In your opinion, I'm just going to move to the period where she delayed her decision to come clean or didn't come clean. So in your opinion, would trauma, mental state, or her symptoms have affected her decision-making process to hold back for 3 months between August to October? Whether any of these would have been a challenge or barrier to her to come clean?
I don't think specifically trauma in itself would have played such a big role in her decision-making to delay or not to delay. I think there may have been other, priorities or other reasons why she chose to take the actions that she has taken.
So, Doctor, what you're saying is that actually she has perfectly sound judgment, sound mind to make that call.
She had, so to be clear, I think she had the capacity to make decisions. Whether she made a good decision, bad decision, whether she chose to say a truth, untruth,
yes.
She was aware that she was taking such a course of action.
Okay, good. I was just trying to say whether something clouded her judgment in that
Yes.
sense. So, in your opinion, if it was made clear to her that she had to come clean early, say in August or September period, early on, she would have been of sound mind and she could have made perfect judgment to make that call if needed, if it was made it clear to her.
She had the capacity to make the decision as to what she wanted to do.
Okay.
What she wanted to do. Yeah, whether the decision was right, wrong, good, not so ideal, that's a separate issue altogether.
Understand. So, so basically, I think if it was suggested to her that it's your call, so she had perfect judgment in the sense to decide what she wanted to do. So it's not impaired by, just to confirm, not impaired by any of these.
I wouldn't use the word perfect. I mean, she had adequate capacity to make those decisions.
Okay. So whether she was asked to lie, to delay, or to make a call, just to confirm again that she would not have been confused. She would not have been in a confused state.
Medical definition confused, she would not have been in a medically defined confused state that would have impaired her so significantly that she didn't have the capacity to make the decisions.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. No further questions.
Make some observations. I think maybe to build on what Mr. Dennis Tan was asking, he presented a set of facts. I mean, actually, what we're really trying here to do is to determine what the facts are. Essentially, there are two versions, essentially. You could broadly boil it down to that. And that's really at dispute, and that's where the COP is trying to determine whether she had, in fact, been telling the truth. Her recount of the instructions and directions given to her, that's one version. The other version is, as Mr. Dennis Tan alluded to, was suggested by Mr. Pritam Singh, Ms. Sylvia Lim, and Mr. Faisal Manap, who disagreed with her version. So that's another version. We are in the process of trying to determine which is accurate, which is true. And I guess that's where the question has arisen as to her judgment, her medical condition, mental state, and whether she's been able to make rational decisions. As you've shared, general questions, general responses really vary, and there are many reasons why people do different things. All of us do many things as well. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a mental impairment of any sorts. But in your judgment and what you've shared, and if I were to understand correctly, is that in your assessment, talking to her, talking to her husband, and also going through the footages that have been available during the said period, looking at the transcripts, what has been discussed, in your opinion, medically, she doesn't suffer from some of the conditions that that have been put forward to you. Basically, she is of sound mind. She's conscious. She's able to make the decisions. Whether they're right or wrong decisions, that's a different matter. All of us make right or wrong decisions all the time. But in your professional opinion, she was aware and conscious of what she was doing. Would that be correct?
Yes.
So I think that really behooves a COP to determine, I guess, in our effort to determine which versions seem to make sense, and that's within our remit. But I think we do thank you for your assessment, and I do understand the sensitivity, and I think you have done that to refrain from going into details where it may not be necessary. I would just want to place it on record. I mean, as someone who, for me personally, who supports a lot of the work in the mental health front, concerns about mental health stigmatization, about how perhaps we could sometimes over-medicalize things, which doesn't help those who actually do have the conditions. Would there be any general observations and comments that you would like to share with us for our own understanding and perhaps also for the public understanding as to how we should approach issues like this? Because there is always the temptation to, I guess, attribute mental health conditions to individuals for various reasons. But would there be any general sort of comment you would like to share with us, given the context of what we've been trying to approach and trying to address today?
I think that many people living in our urban society would undergo different stresses from work, family life, and society in general. But just because you have certain stress and emotional symptoms doesn't mean you have a psychiatric disorder. However, a good proportion of Singaporeans do suffer from some form of psychiatric disorder. And I think if anyone does have a psychiatric disorder, I think it would be very useful for them to seek help. Seeking help doesn't mean going to a psychiatrist. You can also go to a mental health professional in the community. There are agencies out there that there are counseling services in the neighborhood available to them. So I think most important is seeking help. And I think there is no shame to admit that one is suffering from a psychiatric disorder or even stress from the normal stresses of life. But most important is that we are able to support each other. And a good number, in fact, the vast majority of people with mental health conditions do recover. And it's important that we give them the support so that they can make a full recovery and get on with their lives.
Would it be also correct to say that we should be careful not to, I guess, over-medicalize and, I guess, over-analyze and attribute conditions to folks, because we all do feel stress and concerns? And would that be something that we should bear in mind, because it does also stigmatize those who may actually suffer from such conditions?
Yes, I think we shouldn't use these psychiatric terms loosely, and if we were to use the terms, I think we should have a reasonable understanding of what they mean and not to just use it casually, because I think a person who truly suffers from a significant psychiatric disorder would feel that the other person doesn't truly understand their experience. And many of these people have told me that when they suffer from a major mental illness, the number one thing that they feel sad about is that they feel lonely, because they feel that no one else can understand their experience, and they find it difficult to find someone to relate to.
Understand. Okay. So with that, there being no other questions, thank you very much for the assessment and sharing with us your evaluation on Ms. Khan and the terms which we have put forward to you through IMH. A transcript of the proceedings will be shared with you for verification. Do go through it. If there are any amendments, do make changes and send the transcripts back to us. You have written up any short report, do make it available to us as well, if there are any. Do note that the transcripts and any evidence given to committee are not to be disclosed to anyone or published, and must be kept strictly confidential until the committee has presented its report to Parliament. There being no other questions, once again, thank you very much for assistance. You may withdraw, and I'd like to ask the Sergeant-at-Arms to accompany our witness out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cheok.
Thanks, Dr. Cheok.